Anna, so it's great to have you today. I think that we're going to be talking about one of the hottest topics in software testing, which is automation. And as you know, a lot of people don't know when and where to automate. So why don't you first maybe talk a little bit about your expertise and some of your latest experience in automation, and maybe we can use that as a segue into the webinar.
All right. So my background is in e-commerce and financial sector applications, and I've been a manager, and I've been manager of software testers and automation engineers. So I know intimately what it takes to have automation and to have a successful automation. And my projects were different. They were internal, external, and different features. So I know a little bit that one size doesn't fit all. And we will be talking about it later regarding the tools. I also led in my company an automation testing SIG. It's a special interest group. It was designed when my company reorganized into product units, and we needed a solution for cross-functional team automation, so I have an experience in that because I was leading this SIG. And also my expertise ranging in homegrown tools, commercial tools, licensed tools, and also open source.
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious, you know, when we were tossing around topics for this month's webinar, and I know you talk on a lot of topics. I've seen you talking at many conferences. I'm wondering why you chose test automation. Or do you have a current problem that you're working on that you really wanted to share how you solved it, or
Sure.
Why did you choose this?
I speak a lot at Agile conferences, and I speak a lot at testing conferences as well. And this question always comes up because for some reason a current attitude of non-testing world is let's automate everything. And people come into me and say, so my manager told me to automate everything. And I sign because I know that you cannot do that, number one. And number two is when you jump into tools before you jump into strategies, you're going to lose. And I've seen a lot of tools being developed and claim that we can solve all your problems. And that's not valid claims, and this is why I want to talk about that, because my background and experience can help you with selecting a winning automation strategy.
Great. Okay. Well, let's get on with it here. Here we go. So let's start off with a poll. Sabrina, why don't you start off the poll? I'm not an expert poll runner, so I'll let Sabrina do that. The poll is about your primary responsibility and how you're involved in test automation, whether or not you're a manager responsible for testing, automation engineer, a tester, or none of the above. So let's see what we got here. We just want to kind of get a feel for the audience, and it looks like it's fairly even. You know, the poll results are coming, and most people on the webinar here are testers, Anna, and we have 40% testers, 28% managers for testing, 20% actually automation engineers, and 4 are none of the above. So that kind of gives you an idea who's on the audience today.
Sure, it's great.
Yeah.
So we will be covering topics that are relevant to all of you.
Great.
Let's go on.
One question that has come in is about what are some good metrics to capture or track the value added by automation. So, you know, we won't attack that right now, but keep that in the back of your mind as we go through, and maybe we can make sure we get that question answered. So let's go on here. I'll let you take it away, Anna.
Okay. So I will start with my definition on automation so that we can set some common terms here. So my definition of automation is a utilization of tools, frameworks, and scripts that assist with testing or checking tasks. It's a very large definition, and I would like to keep this definition in mind when we talk about different ways how you can use the automation.
Okay. Relation. Alrighty.
You can go to the next slide.
Yeah, sure.
Some examples of automated tools, and different ways you can use automation. And it's gonna probably blow your mind because some of them you never thought that this is automation, but it is. It's using of the tools. And unit testing frameworks, test controllers, recording playback tools, performance testing tools, security testing tools, analytics collectors, screen capturing tools, code coverage tools, different protocols, testing tools like fixed protocol for financial industry. If you don't know what it is, it's a specific protocol where you use special engine to exchange certain messages about trading. There are specific tools for that. Monitoring tools, monitoring performance and other behavior of the system when it's real-time running. Database testing tools, simulators, log helpers, debuggers, data population scripts, how to set up your database or put specific data for your testing, keystroke recording tools. All of that is samples of automation.
Right. I was just wondering, so out of all of these tools, the ones that you see most common on the market, I would say would be something related to recording and playback. Is that right?
I would disagree. There is a lot of those tools, but usually when people think about automation tool, they think about recording playback. But there is much more different ways of how you can use something that a machine that helps you with doing your testing.
Right. I'm just wondering which one would be the one that most people forget about or don't think about that they should be thinking about.
People forget about a lot of them because they kind of trying to think of a tool that helped me to do functional testing, mostly if you are in a functional area, and this is how you count your test cases and all of that and count your coverage. But really, for your testing, a lot of analytical tools that helps you analyze your results are really important tools because they will provide you information that you need in testing your software. A lot of those tools you will not think as tools, but for example, something like screen capturing tools. If you want to explain or capture your bug and it's not reproducible each time, it's a perfect tool for that. Or test controllers. I have seen it in my company. We were using test controllers and it's not recorded playback. It's more a command. It's a separate process that commands certain processes to run or execute certain functions, and I've seen that a lot. And definitely unit testing framework is not recording in playback.
Right.
So all of that is usage of tools that help you with automation. A lot of tools, I would say, using your setups for your testing is like a must-have, and people usually don't think of it as a tool. But when you have like Access database, you preset some of your values, or you use different. Maybe we use Python to generate some data also. So that is really good usage of the tools because it saves you time when you need it.
Okay. Here's the next one here.
So first, what I want to say, and I want to reiterate that automation really is a helper. It will help you in different ways. Don't think of it only in one way. As any tool, and it's a variety, it's like a toolkit. You can use a screwdriver, you can use a hammer, you can use something else, and it's all different. They have different functions, and you need it for different reasons. So some of the areas where I used automation was obviously creating a safety net of business critical workflows and logic that must work every time. And that suite of tests helped me with doing kind of regression. It was a very robust suite. It was not too many tests, but I use it as sanity check for each release, so we don't need to do extensive regression testing. And definitely recording and playback is something that I try to avoid using, and this is why. Automation allows you to check code on various levels, from unit components to distributed systems. And there's different tools that help you with with testing different levels. For example, if you know that, and you should know, usually the large production system do not consist of one layer. You have UI layer, you have something under UI, you have front end, which is a front end layer, you have excuse me, a backend layer, which usually is written in different language in many companies that I work with, and you have a database layer. And sometimes you have a middleware, which is exchanging different data and messages between different processes. All of those layers should be tested differently because there is a different logic that is implemented on those layers. For example, if you want to test database, using record and playback is really a bad idea because it's going to take a lot of time. And UI will be changing, and this is not what you want. So using database queries and golden copy to check your generated query results against the golden copy results usually is much faster solution because it runs in seconds. So this is an example. Another way to run automation is debugging, analyzing, and replicating failures. It's really helpful when you do the analysis. And this is something that people don't think about, but all of the debuggers, log helpers, if you can capture your keystroke and repeat your keystroke, that is different ways of help you with your testing because it saves you time. Monitoring running programs and capturing results for later analysis is also a good way of use automation. So in all those ways, automation help us.
Yeah, so this is automation as a helper, but what about places where people use automation maybe where they shouldn't? You know, where should we not use automation?
I'm talking in details about it in the end of my slides.
Sure.
But what I want to start with is something that people keep forgetting, which is my next slide.
Okay. All right. Well, good. Here we go.
Here we go. Automation is a code. What does it mean? As testers, we know that code is created by humans, which means it has bugs. You have to test your automation. You do not trust your automation because it's written by people. When you're writing code, you need to think about it, you need to debug it, you need to test it, and you need to upgrade it, which means that automation needs development and debugging time. It cannot be done on the fly. And some people think that, well, manual testing, you just jump on it and you test it. It's not the same with automation. It's the same way of creating a program, because automation is coding. New and change functionality affects the test suite, and it requires maintenance to keep it up to date. And you will see it in every release. Something will change, and your automation suite is obviously not up to date, which means it's useless. So one of the good ways, one of the strategies that I will talk about, do not try to automate everything, because your maintenance is going to kill you. You never release anything in production if you rely on automation, and it's humongous. So try to keep it very lean in a way. Automation needs skills. This is something that a lot of managers do forget. Because it's coding, it needs a developer. It needs a programmer. You cannot just have some people and learn some scripting, and they've been great manual testers, and all of a sudden, yeah, go learn this tool and then use this tool. It's not enough. It could be enough when you're just starting and you're creating few test cases, few test scripts that you want to demonstrate it, but this is continuing development project. So it needs dedicated engineers with the software development background. Automation has upfront costs. You need to design it, you need to think about your long-term solutions. There is a lot of thinking and trial and error, research and development happening with automation. And that is something that a lot of managers do forget. They think, well, we got a tool, so it's going to be working like in a week. No, you will need to integrate it into your system and into your process. There is always version 2. What do I mean by that? If you're using a tool, if you're using a language, there is always upgrade. So, for example, you're using Python as a language for your automation. There is different versions of Python, and some of those versions have bugs, which means that they will block some of your automation. If you have licensed tool, then sometimes you need to upgrade and you need to buy the new version. And as with any language, is any product on the market, you have to be aware that at some point there will be always version 2. And sometimes this version, the legacy versions, will not be compatible with some of the latest frameworks that developers use. And this is a reality. So you have to think about it long term.
Yeah, I mean, I think not only version 2 of the tool that you're using, but also, you know, your own code is going to have many versions where maybe you even have to go, what we found is maybe you even have to go in and refactor your own automation code.
Absolutely. Yes, this is a reality. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And that kind of leads to the next slide. I was going to ask you, you said that automation is code and it needs skills, and you really have to have a programmer on a task like this. And the thing is that most programmers want to work on cool stuff, right? And automation may not be thought of as cool stuff. And so, you know, that's kind of the problem that we run into, is really having a developer that is interested in automation. That's kind of hard to find.
Yeah. And this is why I want to talk about skills and responsibilities. Mm-hmm. And this is really critical because I'm seeing, as a manager, I'm seeing a lot of specs for example, automation engineer positions that they're asking for testing experience. And for some reason, some managers or some hiring personnel and even some agents who are providing personnel to the companies mix the two. And you should not mix the two because it's totally different professions. So I will start with a role that really could be a tester, which I call it a toolsmith. And the toolsmith is somebody who is not necessarily a programmer, but they enjoy testing, but they enjoy creating tools to help with their testing. And this, I've seen that for the first time when James Bach was working with my company, and basically the first thing he did, he was consulting with us, the first thing he did, he created some automation tool to pre-populate some data. He just jumped into it, and this is what he did. Mm-hmm. And then he used I think he used different scripts, and those people could be on your team. They really enjoy doing those little things. So having a toolsmith helps you when you're in a team of manual testers, because those people are comfortable with working with the code. They could be testers, and sometimes their roles are testers, but they're just comfortable with automation, and they create different tools to help other people test. The second skill is really a programmer, an automation engineer. And I want to reiterate that those people are not necessarily testers. And expecting them to be testing experts is not realistic in many ways, because these people are working with the code and they're thinking as a coder. Oftentimes, automation engineers being hired to create framework for testers. They do have quality mindset, and I met some automation engineers, fantastic automation engineers who work with testers and they socialize with testers and they think alike. But testing skill is different from automation, and you need to separate the two. Then there is a test scripter. The scripter is sometimes for some reason, sometimes company hire interns to do the scripting. So they have a scenario and you have function and you create the scripts. Because it's perceived to be heavily manual work, but not in a way that you need to have testing skill. You just need to create those scripts. It's good to be a scripter. If you're a scripter, it's good to be a tester also. Why is that? Because then you will create something robust. Because you will think as a tester and you will see that, oh, this script and this script, they're kind of doing the same thing. Let me create a different scenario or break the two or change the two. So somebody needs to watch over those scripts. You cannot just continually add it and add it and add it, because scripts become liability. And the very important role that I want to reiterate is it's critical. It's really critical role is the customer of automation, because automation is really a tool for the tester. So as a manager, as a testing manager, I was a customer of automation. And as an agile team, you have this product owner and you have the team of developers to develop something to you. You, as a customer of automation, have to prioritize what exactly you need, because this tool is developed, this suite is developed for you, for your needs. So don't let programmers or automation engineers or somebody else, if it's a different team, to get carried away with cool features, and this is what you mentioned, Phil, because you are driving that. The reason automation is existing is to help you. So you, as a customer of automation, must be a testing expert, and you have to have skills in testing strategies, because automation, as any tool, needs skills to use. So maybe it was an eye-opener for some people. Me, I'll tell you about myself. I've been always a customer of automation. I was a scripter, because it's easy for me to run scripts and to write scripts, and I enjoy doing it. But that was not something that I was doing for long. I sometimes use different tools to write some scripts, and I've been very sophisticated in that. But the reason I did it is that I could understand how much time it takes, because all automation takes time. Usually if you write a script, you need a day or like half a day to debug it. And that kind of allowed me to estimate how long those things take. But my primary role was the customer of automation.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that what's interesting here is you mentioned the test strategies. I think that a lot of people start diving in automation, even if they have these roles on the top, and they start, like you said, we can't automate everything. One, because we don't want to. Two, because there's not enough time. But automating the right thing is really important, and I think that
absolutely, yes. I think it's more important than automating the right things.
Yeah.
So I'll go a little bit into the test automation strategy as I found it winning. I found that those principles are the winning principles for test automation, because I've been using automation for about 15 years, so this is based on my experience. When you automate some of your test scenarios, you want to have a critical coverage, and this is what you mentioned, Phil, before. If you leave it with some developers, they will get carried away with cool features, and this is not what you need. And you have to really, and that's where I say the skills of a test strategist come into play with the critical coverage. You have to define what's enough. You have to keep your suite lean, where you have to trim it all the time. It's a continuous maintenance of the scripts. You cannot just add to it and add to it, because at some point it will not work for you. This test suite should be of low maintenance. It has to be ready for next iteration and release with low input. If your iteration is 2 weeks and you start your automation a week into it, and it has to be ready by 2 weeks, but it takes you like 3 weeks to upgrade your suite, then you don't have automation. It's useless. So this is really a strategy to keep it in mind, that it has to be low maintenance. And I will discuss later, I will discuss some of the mistakes to avoid, so then you can keep it at low maintenance. It has to be easy to run on demand. The tool has to be at your hand when you need it. Ideally, it should be one button click. So continuous integration kind of DevOps are taking into consideration that demand. So a lot of what they do is to have it easy to run on demand. So when you check in, automatically some tests running. So this is part of that strategist. But if you don't have DevOps, then still think about how easy you want to run it when you need it. And you might need it in very unusual circumstances when you're not ready, but it has to be ready for you. If you have a saw, it has to be sharp when you need to cut the tree. You have to, so some of the ways to run on demand, for example, you have a big suite, but you can tag certain tests for specific scenarios. For example, you need to change certain feature fast, and you need to release it in production, and you don't have time to run all the scenarios because it may be taking 3 hours or 3 days, I don't know. So you should be able to pull some of the tests automatically and run this specific suite. You might create pre-selected suites for different coverage. That is another way of, sometimes you don't have tags functionality working, so you might have like a different directory where you have certain tests, and you just point to this directory and say run all. So some of that, think about easy to run on demand, because testing is something that happens unexpectedly, and testing happens on demand, and those demands can come out of nowhere. Your suite should be fast, so distribute as much as you can. For example, if you're running it on one machine and it takes a day to run, running it overnight on 10 machines, and you can use developers and your team machines because it's empty, nobody's using it, you can distribute that too, and it will run to you in 2 hours instead of a day. You should be able to run it on multiple environments. For example, you can use different operating systems to run some of the tests. You can mix and match them. Try not to use the same thing over and over again. Try to change your environments. Try to change your browsers when you run the tests. As I mentioned, distributed. It could be distributed on different servers. You can have a specific test lab dedicated to running your test. I don't know how your company is doing it. It's good to have environments which are not touched by anybody else, because it might disturb your setup and then you need to change your setup over and over again. So think about running it fast. And a very important piece, targeting for zero tolerance. Your test should be failing only for real bugs in the product. What is happening with every new version, your tests start failing because they are not compatible with the new version. The feature change, the data change, UI change, and all of a sudden your tests are failing for the wrong reasons. This is very dangerous, because that means that your automation cannot give you any information that you need. So you have to really think about zero tolerance as one of the strategies demand for winning test automation.
Yeah, I think actually I think this goes back to one of the initial questions, which was, what are some good metrics to capture or track to determine the value added by automation? And if you have a lot of failures that are not due to bugs in the product, then obviously your automation is not helping you too much.
Yeah.
But that would be a really good one.
That's when it becomes an impediment. Yeah.
Right. And one question came in that talked about the last slide. Sorry I didn't bring it up. I didn't see it in time. It says that, isn't it true that automation engineers and scripters, even ones that are well-versed in testing, are often constrained in how much they can test by the amount of time it takes to build the automation and meet aggressive timelines, especially those in agile teams, and thus limiting how deep such testing can actually take place?
So I will agree with you partially regarding this question. Yes, it's a time constraint, but what I really want to reiterate is that testing is a skill. If your automation engineer doesn't have those skills, then it's like developer testing. They can do it under guidance, and all developers should test, but you need to guide them. You need to coach them on how to do testing effectively. Mm-hmm. Because testing is a different profession. So automation engineer helping creating tools for testers.
Right. And we have another question from the same guy, Tim. Tim's really...
Yeah, hi, Tim.
Tim is really into this here. Okay, he says, on zero tolerance, how much emphasis should really be placed on that? You know, ideally bugs would happen only in the product, but as you mentioned, maintenance as a need, there are always failures because the scripts don't work just because of changes. And also, what about hard to reproduce issues that may actually indicate a flaw in the design of the system? You know, this is kind of getting back to the maintenance and the really zero tolerance.
So you should expect that when you have a new version, as soon as you start new development, all your existing automation is under question. It's under question. It's not trustable anymore. And you have to come with this mindset to every new project and every new release. You should expect that as soon as you start new developing, you cannot trust your existing automation suite. And you have to be very conscious about what's changed, and communication within the team is really important, because I've seen that happen, that developers, when they start creating new changes, they really don't communicate it because they say, well, I'll test it. They forget that there is an automation suite that also needs changing. And this is something that you have to keep in mind all the time, because it's a secondary task. Oftentimes, the developer cannot test automation engineer which exact change are gonna be happening, and this is a reality, because programming is creation of something new. You have to find an ideal solution. You cannot predict how you're going to implement certain function before you implementing it. And this is a reality too. So the only thing that sometimes developer can give to automation engineer is a heads up. Hey, I'm changing this feature, or hey, I'm changing this part of the system. How I'm going to change, I don't know. I'll tell you later, but this is going to be affected. Because catching up with the bugs that are not real bugs in the product is big headache if you don't have the information of what has been changed.
Right. So, you know, one of the things that we do is develop frameworks in order to, I wouldn't say minimize, but at least keep the maintenance at a reasonable level. And I'm wondering, you know, maybe that would be another metric, actually, is how much of the automation code needs to be changed.
To be honest with you, I'm not sure that sometimes it's a good metrics, because demands of the business could be anything. You know, tomorrow they say, well, we need to change the whole workflow. What do? You you change the whole workflow. Probably how much of I would agree with you partially. I'm starting thinking of it. It probably will be a good metrics in a way that it will help you assess how robust is your test automation is.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Here's another question that's not quite related to this from Carlos. He says, in an agile life cycle, what should be the main focus of the automation to be effective? So, we can put that in the back of our mind and answer it coming up here after this poll. There's a poll.
Okay, but please do remind me of Carlos' questions because I want to talk about it because I've been working with Agile team for the last 6 years.
Okay, I'll remind you. Here we go. Here's the poll. And the poll is about the types of automation tools and frameworks that people use. Sabrina, can you run the poll? So we got licensed tools, open source, homegrown, mix of the above, and none. And I'm really curious about this one. Nobody's using homegrown, so that's interesting. Because I would think that a lot of people would be using homegrown for things like data population and things like that, but I guess not.
Well, we don't know how many people and if it's representation of the industry. Because I've been working in my company, we use homegrown or everything else.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it turns out that 15% use licensed tools, 23% open source, 0% homegrown.
Okay.
54% use a mix of the above, and 8% have none. So,
okay. So I would think in the mix of the above include homegrown and open source or license. So no, it's not. Yeah, that's how I would read it. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. So what's kind of interesting to me is that only 15% use licensed tools. That's
because man, in current state of the industry, there is so many open source tools.
Yeah.
So many.
Well,
which is a good thing. It's a good thing.
The thing about open source tools is that they do require sometimes more expertise to use them correctly. So
I would disagree because I've seen that you need to hire specialists into some of the licensed tools because you really need to know specific language. For example, UTP has a specific language that only specialists can work with it. So I've seen that there is a need for QTP automation engineer because that's all they do.
Right. So I guess you need special expertise for any tool.
Yeah. Well, open source is more accessible, I would say.
Yeah.
Lately. Yeah. Because it's built on, I think it's built for the population. I think there are expectations that because we're not going to sell it, we might as well make it accessible to people who have less skills.
Right.
That's the open source mentality.
Okay, well, I guess that brings us up to picking out a tool.
Yeah. So when you're picking up a tool, and the reason I had this poll is it was interesting for me to see that some people, they just use one tool, but some people use, a lot of people, 54%, so half of our listeners use a mix. And this is a good strategy. When you select a tool or a variety of tools, you first have to think about what your long-term and short-term goals. For example, you have to, in a way, provide, like, have a picture, have a vision of where your product is going. Is it going to end right now? Is it going to end in 2 years? Is it going to be on the market for a long time? What's the strategy and what's the plans from the business? That's number one. Number two, you need to talk with your developers. For example, sometimes developers, when they're in research and development phase, they select very latest frameworks. I've seen that a lot, especially. No, not even especially. I've seen it on the web projects, and I've seen it on Windows client server projects on desktop. developers do try to anticipate the future, which means that they will select some of the frameworks or languages that will be developed in the future. And I've seen a lot of failures with that, because one was with Silverlight. We put, it was several years ago, I think 2009, when Silverlight became like the next big thing. And in a year or so, it just Microsoft stopped supporting it, and we basically wasted several months of our development because we used that. And when the company stopped supporting it, then you have to drop it and move to the next big thing. And sometimes what happens when there is one shiny thing on the market, there is a commercial open source tool developed specifically for that framework. And once you drop the framework, you have to drop the tool. So you cannot transfer your tool to another framework. I've seen that happen. So you have to think about what's your long-term goals with choosing the tool. If your product is desktop and in a year it becomes a web product, do not invest. Do not invest in record and playback tool for desktop. It will because of the maintenance cost and upfront cost. And at some point you need to hire specialists, and at some point the specialists become obsolete. So do a lot of research around your project when you select the tool. Build by open source. Why build? Because you have in-house support for building it, and if you have bugs, you can fix it right there. If you have an open source or a licensed product and it's not working, and I've seen it happen a lot, you blocked. You blocked because for some reason, something, you always need to customize any of the tools. I never seen the tools just working off the shelf. It's not a reality. Sometimes the tools are expecting certain properties in the code, and those properties do not exist. For example, there is a record and playback tool that expects, so this property X is going to have this value, and developers, instead of using this property X, they use another property and put another value into it, and you have to make a hack to make it work. And I've seen that happen months of your time as a automation specialist. So do not expect that all your tools will be working off the shelf. It's not happening. Another reason for building a tool is, and in my company we build test controllers, meaning that we build a specific processes that control the application, give it a command, and then ask for certain values to be validated. And that was the winning strategies for us, because we could be we could customize our testing suite. And if you have a vendor, you're not the only one for this vendor. So your request can be a priority or may not be a priority. So just think about that. And when you build it, then you're in control. What to look for in a tool? Look how it suits your needs. For example, a lot of things that I've seen with recording and playback tools, they record and play back a GUI layer. And GUI layer is not going to be stable for a while. In fact, the only time I've seen record and playback tool worked, and that was QTP actually, tool, is when you have to test your legacy version upgrades, because your legacy version, your UI is not changing. So you can safely say, okay, with this UI, I'm having this automation suite, and I'm having this test, and I know this UI will never change. UI will change first, just to be aware of it, that UI is something that will change first in any project, in any software project, because of many reasons. And Phil, you probably know that because you work with usability and UI in the web, so you know that UI can be implemented incorrectly, there's always this, oh, we want a fresh look and feel, and all of a sudden all the buttons are moved, and the record and playback, you have to start from scratch. When you look for certain things in a tool, it has to suit your needs in a way that think about which functionality you're going to test. For example, we had in my company, we had a product which was a reporting product. Basically, you create financial reports, which are usually a lot of rows, many rows of financial data. And some of the tools will not even work with that because it expects like 1 or 2 rows, and you're returning 100 rows, and the tool just chokes on it. So you have to match your tool with your feature and look for specific specifics in a tool. As I mentioned before, if your if your desktop application becomes web in 2 years, then investing in heavily in desktop tool is probably not a good strategy. And another thing that I want to reiterate: one tool is not solving all problems. You have to look into variety. You have to be conscious of, okay, this tool is not suitable for my load testing. I'll use another tool for that. Or this tool is not suitable for X. I'm not going to use it there. In other ways to use the tools is why I'm saying in build, because usually when you have several teams working together on a product, then there is integration points. Then think about that your tool may not be another team's tool. So if you build something together, then you might create an automation suite. If only your team build this licensed product and another team doesn't, then you're not compatible. You have to test something manually. So think about that. And very next question that is really important: who will be supporting your tool? Do you have specialists? And if that's their sole responsibility, because tool is a responsibility, it's a liability. You have to have professional working with it. You cannot just drop it on the test team, because what I'm seeing happen is people stop using Teams. Sometimes it's easy to test something manually. It's faster. So if you don't have a dedicated specialist, your tool is going to die. So somebody's responsibility have to be maintain, create new tests, maintain existing tests, and upgrade, and be a support person and look at the failures every day. And this is a separate job responsibility. Now, another thing which I've seen happen too, and this is a reality in our common industry, your company have reduction in force. They lay off people. Your specialist leaves. If there is one specialist, all of a sudden they leave, and it's a very specialized tool to keep maintained, then all of a sudden you lose all your automation. And you need it like tomorrow, and you stop hiring, and you only can hire somebody in like several weeks or months. So all of that, as a manager, you have to be thinking on, and those are your risks. You have to have a plan B, and I'll talk about plan B a little bit later.
Yeah, and as a last note on selecting a tool, a lot of times we work with our clients and we actually, use their software, their product against different types of tools to test them out to see if they actually work. Because sometimes you can't just buy a tool and spend all that money and then find out, oh shoot, it doesn't work, doesn't do exactly what I need it to do. So
exactly.
Actually trying it and doing the real thing before.
Yes.
Before buying. So.
Yeah, allow some time for research. Allow yourself some time to research different tools on the market and try it out. Yes.
Right. So that brings us to the next thing, I guess. Your years of experience, lots of mistakes.
Yeah, I've seen it fail so many times, and I desperately want it to be working because it's my helper. So I was very upset when something is not working, and usually you find out about some of the mistakes pretty much in the middle of crisis when you need something to work right now, and you need a few weeks to fix it. So to reiterate, automating new versions through UI is a bad practice, because UI is something that is changing right away. In any new version you're going to see, it's very rare that you're going to see new function without changing the UI. And because some of the recording and playback, they take a snapshot of your screen, then if you change in your pixels, forget it. Then you can throw away your code. You have to re-record it and play it back again, which is waste of time, real waste. So try to not automate something which is an agile development specifically through UI. It can work well with legacy version, as I mentioned before, when you test upgrades, when you know there is a lot of different versions that your client have, and at some point they will choose their upgrades, and it has to work seamlessly all the time. And I've been in projects like that, because you promise your clients when they upgrade, they will not lose all their settings, custom settings. Then the tool, using a tool that does record and playback works. Another major mistake is hard coding values. Try to not hard code anything in your test code. Try to, because this is the first thing that's going to fail in the next version. As an example, and I have a lot of examples, a lot of time you have new specs for example, characters. Specific fields all of a sudden have different requirements. Specific numbers, all of a sudden you had a boundary of this number, and tomorrow the boundary changed. You have to go back and upgrade your code. If you're reusing the same value, try to create a parameter and just set it in a test. I've seen, being in financial industry, one of the most common things I've seen is when the ticket, which is a symbol for a companies on the market, when they trade, you know that it's like a 4-letter acronym of the company. Those change all the time. And I made this mistake of hard coding those tickets, and they've been ticker symbols, sorry. And they've been changed in like half a year, so I had to change it all over again. Trying to test all attributes all the time. So for example, you write in a test suite, and obviously when there is an action and there is a change in preset conditions, you want to validate all of those conditions. That's a mistake, don't do this. Because some of the
Anna, do you mind if I interject here? We kind of gonna run up against the time clock here.
Okay.
Just one thing about one more note on this. You said starting automation too early or too late. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah. So starting automation too early or too late. As I said, automation is a tool that has to give you information. If, for example, you're in R&D project, research and development, you're developing a brand new product, and you don't know whether the customer like it or not like it, you just want to put it on the market, and you're obviously waiting for feedback, don't waste your time on automation, because a lot of things will change. What's too late? You already implemented a lot of code, and now you want to implement automation, and what you need to do oftentimes, I've seen that you need to put some hooks in your existing programs so that automation tool can work with it, but it's too late. You don't want to touch this program.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is one of the examples.
Yeah, we find a lot of times that they don't have the objects named correctly so that we can identify them.
Absolutely. Yes, but it's too late. You want to talk with them when you develop it. You want to present your testability requirements.
Sure.
Not half a year later. Yes.
Okay. So.
Yeah, I mentioned that don't get carried away with cool features, and this is what sometimes programmers do. And do not try to automate everything. This is a mistake. So, my advice, based on many years' experience, is do remember that automation is good when it's up to date. It should be available when team needs it. And so maintenance is a requirement number one. And you have to be fast about changing it. It has to be ready when you need it. Cross-team integration. Try to build simulator for majority of tests. Do not try to integrate the whole system through automation. Limit integration tests to the most critical paths, and this is my experience. Because working with several teams, it's often a problem. Building a framework for your own product. Try to test each layer separately instead of testing everything from one layer. And I mentioned why is that, because there is different logic on different layers. And that logic, usually behavioral logic, is not on the UI level, it's on the backend. So try to test backend directly. Take responsibility.
Okay.
As a tester, you have to demand that the features important to you are prioritized by automation engineers, even though you're not their manager. Demand it because you are the customer. And I want to reiterate it because I've seen so many failures with that. You have a different team of automation engineers and they start get carried away. They want to implement something because it's low-hanging fruit. You don't need it. Take responsibility because that product is developed for you.
Yeah, I think oftentimes automation engineers, they don't really understand the product that they're writing code for.
Yep. Yes. Take charge. It's yours. It's for you.
Let's finish with our last poll here. Sabrina, can you run the last poll? We're trying to see if people are winning with their test automation. Maybe they are winning, yes, no, or we don't have automation. 20 looks like 20% don't have any automation, and most people are doing what they consider pretty well with automation in terms of winning. About 30% need a little bit of help. So hopefully with the webinar we've been able to, so we have 57% are winning, 29% are not winning, and 14% do not have it. So hopefully for those 43% other than yes, we can help them quite a bit, and then the ones that are winning, maybe we can, today they've been able to win even more. But lastly, Anna, why don't you cover some of your risk mitigation hints just real quickly, and then we'll end up our webinar.
Very important, yeah. Some of the hints. If you don't have a toolsmith in your team who can create those little tools to help you, consider learning from other teams or asking programmers. Programmers oftentimes love writing simulators, log helpers, all those little pre-populating data tools that can help you drastically with your testing. Very important, and that was the question from the beginning, do not replace exploratory testing with automation, because testing needs human brains. Automation is a tool, it doesn't have brains. And I want to reiterate it over and over again, you cannot replace testing with automation. Do not replace usability testing with automation because testing needs human emotions. Your machine is not going to care if that is totally unusable or scary or frustrating interface that you have. You have to have a human. Do not ever automate usability testing with automation. And very important, always have plan B in an emergency because it's a tool. The test server can fail when you least expect it. Database permission, your Oracle admin went home and you need to do something and the permissions don't work, you don't have it. The blocking issue takes too long to fix right before release, and you have it an hour before release, and your automation, you cannot run automation because you need 2 hours, so you have to rely on something else. No electricity, it happens. I've seen test labs went into heat and we have to use fans to cool it down. But those are emergency situations that you have to be prepared for. And when those things happen, you always have to have a plan B, distribute your testing manually, work with your developers, work with support. Anyone on the team, just jump on this software and just do some manual testing. The more eyes on it, the better. So, but you have, as a manager, you have to anticipate the failures do happen when you least expect them. So those are my advices based on my experience of 15 years running automation and being a customer of automation.
Great, thanks very much, Anna. I think that Sabrina.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Anna. That was very, very informative.
Yes, Sabrina.
We are now at the end of our webinar. We have recorded this, so we will be emailing all of you the recorded version on YouTube, so watch out for that. Please keep updated on all our webinars. You'll find that we post updates on any webinar we're having on our social network channels, be it Facebook, G+, or LinkedIn and Twitter. And we do post regularly on our blog, so do check out our website where you'll see lots of daily posts on various topics around software testing. And also, why not download one of our free white papers on test automation? If you go to our website, to the Knowledge Centre, you'll find about 6 different white papers and guides and tips on test automation. And lastly, please email us if you have any queries whatsoever regarding test automation or any software testing at services@xbosoft.com. Thank you very much, everybody.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah, great. It's been great, Anna. Thanks very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All righty.